okay. I know we're enjoying a beautiful first course, but we've got some very talented people up here on the panel for our fireside chat. I'm Louisa Grundy, I'm the VP of Marketing here at Reejig, and it is so nice to see lots of familiar faces in the room, but also see lots of new faces. So welcome, a big, big welcome from everyone at Reejig. So, I'm not going to even introduce the topic because we know what we're here for, re-engineering work in the AI era. But I am going to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers, starting with the wonderful Deb Yates here. Deb is a global talent leader and people and culture expert, having led HR at Lendlease, KPMG, and Reckitt. We're also lucky to say that Deb was one of our very first customers at Reejig. And has always been incredibly forward-thinking in her approach to workforce strategy. So thrilled to have you here, Deb. We've got, I'm going to go next to, leave you to last, Jacinta, but next we've got Alec Wyszynski. Alec is a global talent leader with expertise in the future of work, HR technology and digital disruption. He spent over a decade as the CHRO of Deloitte for Asia Pacific and now leads the APAC business for Josh Bersin. And we're thrilled to be partnering with you here this evening, so welcome. And of course we have, who you just heard from, but the wonderful Jacinta Newman. So Jacinta is a talent transformation and workforce strategy leader who has led change at KPMG, Korn Ferry, Uniting and American Express. And I've spoken to a few people who have been colleagues with Jacinta, and I'm lucky to say that she's my colleague now and is our head of workforce strategy here at Reejig. So let's get into it. First up, let's kind of open the conversation here around the challenges and the opportunities that we're looking at in this AI space. So AI is on the table in every single one of our boardrooms, but why is this an executive priority right now, and what is the opportunity that it's presenting? Alec, let's start with you on this one.
Okay, nice to start with an interesting question. Look, I think there's three things going on that we see from our research that's driving this AI agenda. The first thing I'd say is that we're seeing a major labour market dislocation. We have an epic shortage of skills and talented workers in general. And on top of that, if you haven't been looking at the birth rates over the last 5 years are continuing to tumble. The replacement rate of workers 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the track is going to be worse than what the issue is today. So that's probably the first thing I'd say. The second thing is that we're seeing a huge disruption in business models. We are seeing organisations like telcos play in media. We're seeing retail play in banking. We're seeing the resources companies starting to play in solar and those sorts of things. So industries in general are really, they're converging in many contexts, which adds additional pressure. And I'm sure a lot of you are seeing that in your organisation. The final thing I'd say, which we've been talking about all night and even outside, is in case you haven't worked out, AI is everywhere. So it's a bit like the internet. People said that wasn't going to work. It's up to us to embrace AI, and this is sort of what we're talking about. But we used some research. Josh pulled out some research from PwC, which was done late last year. 4,000 CEOs were interviewed globally, and some key messages came out of that. Firstly, 53% of the CEOs globally think their organisation will not exist in 10 years' time in its current format. That's number one. The next stat's probably even more frightening because they're saying that their expectation, 68% of the CEOs are saying their expectation is that AI will drive value to the customer and internally it'll drive productivity, and they're not talking about cost cutting, etc., and they're not talking about replacement of roles. So they're the three things that we're seeing from our research that's really driving that change.
Thanks, Alec. And Deb, building on that, why do you think it's such a big priority right now?
I think because in a lot of industries it's getting harder to win. Like it's getting harder to win sustainably. So the fight for productivity is definitely there and the fight for growth. And I think it's the boards are interested in both. Where are we going to grow? What's the opportunity to grow faster? And how can we do that as efficiently and as effectively as possible? I think there's a watch out around boards only and management teams focusing too much on the productivity and efficiency, which is super important, but you don't cut yourself to greatness. So I think you need to have an eye on the productivity and absolutely an eye on the growth. And the benefit of AI for me is that it's limitless. Like, there's not a limit on cognitive ability, there's not a limit on the amount of time. It's scalable at such a speed that humans aren't able to do. And so if you're after growth and productivity, it feels like a no-brainer.
I think a really key point you touched on there is that not just a focus on productivity and efficiency, it's this whole balance. And we talk a lot at Reejig about being bold and being responsible. And I think it's something that needs to sit on the shoulders of all of us in this room, where you can be bold, yes, and drive growth, but you've also equally got to look out for your people and make sure you're reskilling them into the roles of the future. So on this topic then, AI is not just a HR problem, it touches every single part of the business. But I want to hear from you, Jacinta, first on who do you think owns the AI transformation journey within an organisation?
Wow, this is a really burning hot topic, and I've already spoken to some of you about this as well. This AI is not a tech upgrade. AI is an absolute business transformation. And we need to think about it from that perspective. And, to Deb's point, absolutely, productivity, operational efficiency, velocity is key, but it's not the only thing here as well. So I think what we need to think about is, especially what we're here to talk about today, is AI and the impacts on the workforce. And when we're actually thinking about the work, the business actually owns the work. So we need to be in a collaboration with the business and with our C-suite and our board. And essentially, I guess the best examples that I'm seeing out of the market as I'm talking to people is many organisations are starting to think about and starting to form AI councils or AI steering committees. And these are comprised of C-suite, business leaders, absolutely CPOs or senior leads within HR as well. So we need to look at this as a whole of business transformation, and it's not that the onus sits on one individual or one function. We need to be taking what can be seen as a fragmented approach, and certainly as HR leaders, we are responsible for helping to pull that together so that we are coordinating that business transformation.
And Alec, I'm going to go to you. What do you have to build on here? What's your perspective on who owns AI transformation?
Look, I agree with that, but I think the one comment I'd make as I look at the room is that, and Josh talks about this a lot, I'm going to try not to use that terminology again after I just but it's up to us. He talks about the fact that we're in an intelligence age and that we really need to be able to rework and re-engineer. And the key component of bringing that to the table in many organisations is in fact the CPO, the CHRO. So I think there's a real role for us to play, and I think as I talk to a lot of you here already, you actually get it. I think my worry is those who are out there that wear your same sort of hats that actually don't get it. The only other thing I'd say there would be that if you're looking at the lovely little booklets that are on your table, you'll see Josh's AI maturity model, and the two key components to go back to echo what's just been said is that there's a redesign component as you go on the journey, but if you really want to get there and get there the right way, it's re-engineering, and this is really where Reejig, re-engineering and Reejig comes in very nicely. So that's the sort of point I draw to you there.
And Deb, I'm going to get a different perspective from you on this one. Is there sort of a critical event that can dictate who in the organisation owns AI transformation?
I like to sort of make these things simple. When I think about it, I think about it in customer, people and governance. And there probably are more, but from my sort of brain, I think if you focus on customer or consumer or whoever the person you're serving, people, the talent that's going to be impacted by that, and then governance, you can see that it's a multidisciplinary approach because there's not one person on your exec team that has the responsibility for all of those. It's a team sport. I think where to start, because some more mature businesses, I think, are thinking customer first and you know where to start. If you're not sure where to start in AI, I would say go where the noise is. Solve a business problem, solve a customer problem. I heard this fabulous term the other day, your people are either burned out or bored out. So go where they're bored or burned. That is, without a doubt, a problem for your customers too. So if in doubt on where to start, go where the noise is. And in my simple brain, I think customer, people, governance.
Thank you. So we can hear that AI is not just for everyone in this room, it's for your entire business. And so it's definitely kind of a multifaceted approach we need to be taking. But I want to now switch to the exciting and kind of innovative use cases. Like, we're all here to hear practical use cases of how AI is being used, how AI is being adopted. So I'm going to start with you, Jacinta. Can you share with us some of the most exciting kind of AI use cases you're seeing global organisations adopt? And what can everyone in this room learn from that?
Yeah, thank you. This might not sound so exciting at first, but just bear with me. We have had a number of our customers initially come and start discussions with us around, and quote, we need to build a new job architectural framework. So I think this is a really interesting concept and a really interesting use case, because what we are actually seeing as we're working with these customers is a relearning of what actually a job architectural framework looks like. And that in order to create that framework in today's world, we need to think very differently about how we used to create job architectural frameworks. So gone are the days where you would have, a project team, you would spend 12 months working on a whole of org, especially across a global organisation, working out a new JA framework, and then tick, project's done, it's rolled out, it's set on the shelf for 5 years, and that's what we're executing on and moving towards. That is a static framework, and it's almost like the term job architecture in itself is almost archaic. When we look at what we're dealing with today, we can't be making decisions and starting to think about what our frameworks look like based on static data. The world is moving far too quickly. The nature of our roles is moving far too quickly. It's changing. It's changing as we start to think about the different technologies that we need to embrace. It's changing as we start to think about what Josh Bersin calls a supercharged worker, or the AI amplified employee. It's changing when we think about what's our DNA of our workforce actually going to look like. It's not just made up of permanent employees and contractors. We need to think about how we actually understand what our work is, and then how we move our work to the right workers. So having a framework purely made up of sort of job families and traditional positions is not going to work if you're thinking about that in a static mindset. I had a really interesting conversation with somebody today, and we were talking about this, and the conversation even went as far as, Jacinta, I'm not even sure we're going to need position descriptions moving forward. Now, that's really taking a leap, and so take a breath for a moment. But we do need to think about what our workforce is going to look like as we start to think about AI and the new tasks and AI potential and the changes that is going to have on our people, and therefore what that is going to look like in terms of the traditional archaic word of architectural framework. So I hope I have articulated that clearly, but I can certainly talk more afterwards.
Thank you. Alec, I'm going to go to you next. You work a lot with organisations on AI strategy. What is happening from an AI point of view in the L&D or the talent acquisition space?
So I'll start with the talent acquisition, and I think your comment just then was absolutely on the money. We've really got to understand what our work looks like and the changes that are going to occur. So there's an organisation, and you can talk to me later, and I'll do it one-on-one rather than get caught on the recording naming that global organisation, that is using some technology that is based out of the US, and it's based around TA. So think about this: a recruiter goes out now and talks to a business leader, and they get the specs for a new job or a replacement job. They talk about the experiences that are there, the skills that are needed, where would the right candidate come from, etc., etc. That recruiter then in the current role will go back and work that up into a role and start to look at where they may look at it. They then would go through and try and search all their sources, whether it's LinkedIn, contacts, whatever technology you want, and they might come back with, let's say, 200 or 300 that might match that candidate. By the way, that's going to take them 6 to 7 weeks because nearly every recruiter's got between 40 to 100 roles to fill in the context of things. They then have to go back and talk to the leader. They've got to get people in, do interviews, spread it down and present them back to the business leader. So the case study that I've seen which blows me out of the water, and I was talking to Josh's other co-founder, Bill Pelster, is that some technology now that is AI driven. What it can do once the recruiter has got all the specifications and loads them into the technology, it can then go out and look at all of the connection points it has. They could be any piece of technology or any database that exists in the organisation and search externally. It can pull maybe 2,000, 3,000 candidates that might fit. It then goes down and searches by skill set. It then might go down and look at social media to find out, Jacinta's really into basketball, so I can do something in that context. That would take AI maybe an hour or two to do to bring up 4,000 candidates. The next step is searching it back down. Then what happens is they go out and they call Jacinta and they say, "Hi Jacinta, we understand that this is your current role, we understand that this is the sort of thing that you're looking at. We have a role available for you." And Jacinta then interacts not with a chatbot, but with AI. And AI, in this particular example, the person talking, we were talking about this a little bit earlier about two AI personas talking to each other. The person then the AI technology does things like, Jacinta, so it's so genuine, like I'm thinking of a question, it's not rote. It does all of that, and it literally can do that in about 2 seconds. It then comes back, can give you the list of all the candidates, a list of the experiences, specifications, goes back to the manager, that's done within a week. Now tell me that's not going to revolutionise the way TA is going to happen. And someone asked a question, did the AI technology identify that it was AI? The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So that's one. The other area that I think most of you have heard of, we've seen numerous case studies from organisations now in the L&D space. So Josh presented about 12 months ago, and he talked at this conference about the fact that AI is going to replace all of the instructional designers, because now you can find some content wherever you want to find it. You can build a program, you can schedule the participants, you can send an email to them, you can get the assessment done all in 2 seconds. And we're seeing multiple organisations now start to adopt that type of case study. Needless to say, after he had that particular presentation, he had a queue of L&D people outside the room wanting to know what was going to happen with their jobs. So this is the importance of having adaptability. 2 quick case studies.
Thanks, Alec. Deb, over to you now. I want you to share with us what's an exciting use case that you're seeing with AI at the moment?
I might share a business use case different to HR. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the company ELF. It stands for Eyes, Lip, Face, one of the most successful beauty care companies. Their CEO, Tarang, I'm just lucky to have spent a bit of time with. And their biggest part of their business model, so the noise, is their influencers. And what they've done is they have now Elffluencers, which are all AI, writing the influencer posts. And what that's done is freed up their influencers to be closer to their customers, to have a better insight of their customers, to better check what the AI is producing. So that's a customer challenge. It's the noise. So what did the influencers hate doing? Writing posts. Boredom. Go where the boredom is. Then what are they able to do? What they love. Connect with customers. What do you get? A better result. So I think if you understand your business and understand where the opportunities are and where the pain points are, that's where you should go. A HR example, opposite end of growth, Lend-Lease, very well broadcast story about a pretty significant reduction in staff. We were stuck in the middle of that and wanting to give our people a clear view on the career opportunities that we had, and we were working with Reejig. And we were working on a career path in which felt bit funny to be doing, right, when we made this shift, but it served us so well because it enabled us to be able to nudge people on available jobs that would suit their next step in their career. At a point in time when we were talking to people about massive downsizing. And it also meant we could see where there were none, so that we could lean into a courageous conversation that there wasn't going to be something for them. We couldn't see, not only in their own sphere, but in the bigger sphere of the possibilities. So those are two very different examples, but I think imagine a HR person sitting down trying to figure out what career opportunities and then relying on an employee to proactively log in and, you know, on the right day find that a job's there, versus receiving an email in your inbox saying, hey, you might think you might be interested in this job. That's a very significant shift.
Thank you. I think listening to all these different use cases, a very common theme around understanding the work. So whether it is looking at your job architecture, having a dynamic view of the work done across your organisation, you first need to know what the work is. Is it talent acquisition, actually looking for the right people? If you don't know what work needs to be done, how can you actually get those right people through to career pathing as well? So I want to start to chat now a bit more practically around, if understanding work is kind of a common theme, for someone looking to start their AI journey, what does this initial phase actually look like? What does it take to do? And what is one of the kind of first concrete steps they could make? So Jacinta, I'm looking at you. You're off to the races here.
Thank you. The first thing you need to do is understand your work. So we need to be able to break down our work and really understand what are the actual tasks that a person is delivering. So in order to do that, you need to be able to partner with somebody, such as Reejig, who has actually already broken down industry work ontologies and already can bring to the table what a framework of your actual tasks actually looks like. So once you understand what your work is and the actual tasks that are involved, you can then start to better understand your workers. So then you can start to match your work with your workers. What I'm essentially talking about here is data. All of us, all too many of us, work in sporadic environments where we have different technologies. We've got data hanging around everywhere, especially if we're in a global organisation, and we actually can't see through the forest, and we can't actually identify what do our people do and who are our people. And what Deb actually calls this is making sure that we actually have a spine that has no scoliosis, a spine that is very healthy, and that spine is then able to feed the body. So that spine is your data set. If you have a beautiful, accurate, consistent data set across all of org when it comes to understanding both your work and your workers, you're going to have a body that is going to move in motion and have a beautiful rhythm. So in order to create that spine, what we need to do is make sure that we actually have a consistent, dynamic, not static, but a consistent, dynamic, AI-driven data set that gives us clear visibility in terms of our work and who our workers are. Sorry, I stole your
Well, let's hear about the spine again, I think. Deb, can you bring this to life a little bit through your experience at Lendlease, and what did you learn about the spine?
So I'll share with you where we got it really wrong. And I mean, it really went like, I was sort of saying to my team, trust me, stay with me, you know, this is going to work. And we were really focused on capability and couldn't work out why the AI machine was giving us nonsense. And it really was nonsense. I was losing credibility with my own team. We were trying to build this career pathing thing. We were all under immense pressure. We were on the front back page of the AFR more times than we wanted to be. Like, so it was a pressure environment. And when we started to understand that actually the Americans had a very different view on capability than the Australians, than the Asians, for, you know, what they said was the same job but actually not, we started to understand that we didn't have a spine. And for me, tasks are the spine. And And I must admit, when Siobhan first said to me, you need to map every task, my eyes glazed over and I was like, that sounds like busy work to me. It sounds like those capability matrices we built that, we spent years on and put on a shelf and nobody ever looked at. So, but actually, we focused on the 20 most common jobs that we had. So, where the opportunity was, and we got those right, and then we went, oh, wow, we're onto something here, right? And it was as simple as crap in, crap out, good data in, good answers out. And for us, the reliability came through doing the task first, and we absolutely had to go to capabilities, but the tasks were the same. In the US, in Asia, in Australia, what people did was the same. People's opinion of the skills, very, very varied. And we, credibility is important when you're trying something new, and you have to accept there'll be messiness, but that was a key. I wish I'd learned that a few months, before the pain.
Jacinta, I'm going to go back to you quickly. So we talk about having a spine, understanding like the tasks and how what else, like what other kind of like intelligence can we actually get from an AI perspective on those tasks now?
This is the magic, because when we actually dive down into the tasks, what Reejig can actually show you then is of each task, what is the percentage of time that an individual is spending on that particular task. So to your point, Alec, in terms of a TA person, if somebody is sourcing, what percentage of time are they spending actually out on sourcing? Once we understand the percentage of time, something really interesting happens. We can then start to understand the AI potential of that particular task. So once we understand the effort and then the AI potential, we can then start to understand if we strip out those tasks that have AI potential and automation, we're actually unlocking quite a large amount of time in some instances where humans can actually spend on more human-centric behaviours. So if we look at, for instance, a registered nurse, our data is showing that 45% of the tasks of a registered nurse actually have AI or automation potential. When we're talking about New Age Care Act that's coming in, when we're talking about all the changes in legislation and whatnot that's coming in, when we're realising that our universities aren't spitting out enough nurses in order to cater for all of this, and you think that almost 50% of a nurse's role can actually be outsourced or done in a different manner, then that is actually really magical stuff, because we can then start to think about how do we actually strip some of that out? With the New Age Care Act, I understand obviously 10% of a nurse's work can actually now go to an enrolled nurse, but it's still not enough. So what else can we think about in unlocking that human potential to actually drive more efficiency across our business? So we can then start to understand how much more operationally efficient can we be? How faster can we get out to market? So what does that speed look like? And then we can also start to understand when we're mapping out tasks and AI potential across the actual entire organisation, where are we seeing task duplication or workforce bloat? Where have we got people that are actually delivering to exactly the same outcome through a particular task? How can we then actually understand that and unlock that so that we have those people focusing on something else that is perhaps driving customer outcomes for that particular organisation? So this is what we call work intelligence, and this can be served up through what we call the work operating system. And what this enables is organisations to actually be able to use data at the C-suite level and at the business level, so top down, bottom up, to ensure that we are creating almost like surgical type decisions when it comes to what our AI roadmap is going to look like. We can prioritise, we can understand our return on investment. Reejig can even tell you how long it's going to take or the time to benefit realisation in terms of once you've actually got a process in place, how long is it going to take for your workers to adopt that, and therefore for you to start to sort of see results and what that looks like. So the work intelligence, and thanks for bringing this up, the work intelligence is actually going to be core to the spine as we move forward in this world of AI.
Thank you. And I think that's it. It's all about how do you make informed decisions, but also how do you know where to start? How do I know where to bite off in the business, get that buy-in, so then you can scale it across the organisation. Alec, I want to go to you as well. I'd love to get your perspective from the work you guys are doing at Josh Bersin around, what does this initial phase look like, or, what can everyone here be learning from the first steps people are taking?
I think just see the summary along with Deb's examples is really a great way to look at a platform to move forward. I mean, the healthcare example is an interesting one. One of the case studies we did in the US, I don't know if they use Reejig or not, but they actually broke down the tasks and suddenly realised that their most experienced and senior nurses were actually scheduling and doing rostering instead of providing the care that they actually had the expertise on. The other comment to make quickly before I answer your question is that let's not get too confused here. AI is not all about technology. It's actually, to your point, it's about data and the power of that data to drive through on tasks, etc. I mean, we get lots of interesting questions around, they think a skills taxonomy is a way to go. They think if they stop worrying about competencies everywhere, there's still a lot of organisations hung up on the competency model. I think Debbie talked about that as well. And starting to understand what the roles are actually made up of. And I think you use capabilities. When Josh and we talk about skills and capabilities, but Josh is now kind of over the skills piece, because you can have someone that's all highly skilled if it doesn't make the work change or do anything else. So we're seeing organisations in the broader context actually starting to try and understand, and again, we made this comment earlier, the larger the organisation is, the more global it is, the more varied it is in its locations, the harder it is to do something like this. Whereas if you've got a smaller organisation, they can at least go out and make some change. So we're seeing organisations bite the bullet and try and build a strategy, try and get their business leaders in, but a lot of them are still not sure what they want to do. So this is again where we partner with Reejig to make sure that they get an understanding of what they're actually trying to do. It's a little bit like when you go to somebody with a problem, the first question we ask is, well, do you actually know what the problem is? And secondly, what outcomes are you looking for? Because if you don't do that, you'll just circle and circle in project teams. So that's sort of a different summary.
Thanks, Alan. I just want to build on that a little bit. So we talked obviously about all the different use cases, kind of where to start from a task perspective, but with any transformation comes kind of a bigger scope of change. So beyond just starting, what else will make organisations successful when starting a transformation journey like this? Debbie, you can go first.
I think one thing that we haven't spoken about that I do think is important is that governance part of the customer people governance. Just because we can, should we, is a good question to keep at the top of your mind. And if you are not super duper confident around the ethical capability of your people, then best work on it now. Critical thinking and ethical decision making are going to be things that humans are still going to be mission critical to do. And so I think just like getting your data house in order, really being focused on the skills and capabilities of the future and investing in developing those now, I think is mission critical.
Jacinta, hand to you.
If this is overwhelming, if it's feeling overwhelming, it's because it is. I think we really need to think about the best and easiest place to start. This is a once in a lifetime and a once in a generation type change to workforce. For me, it's all around we need to think about having this conversation, initiate the conversation if it's not already happening. And I think we need to think about not doing this alone. This is a collaboration, as we shared before, and I spoke earlier in terms of where you're at in your organisation. But it's also about leveraging what's already out there and what's in market. So if we're talking about looking at generating tasks, which is what Deb was talking about earlier, Reejig, there are organisations out there that have already built this and can absolutely get you going with very, very accurate data, and get you to a place that is very fast and efficient, and at the end of the day could very well put you ahead of your competitors. So I think we need to think about how can we help you lead rather than react? How can we help you make these decisions from an organisation-wide perspective collaboratively and using data rather than focusing on just what the shiny new whistle is at that point in time? How can you, as HR leaders, pull together a lot of sporadic, different initiatives that are perhaps being business-led, and to be the conduit and to pull that together to drive that business transformation? I think that's probably some of the key things that we all need to think about in this room.
So I'm going to go a little bit more simplistic. Governance isn't my strong point, but I think both speakers have made a very good argument about what needs to happen. The one thing I'd say to you, which in some cases is obvious, but maybe in some cases is not, you really need to be careful when you're using AI and ChatGPT, because you don't know where the sources of information are coming from. So we can build you a framework. It can show you maybe some steps on how to do the re-engineering, but unless you know the source of where it's come from and the accuracy of that source, then you could make yourself look very silly in front of your executive team and you find out you've got holes in this. It's one of the reasons that when we developed our Galileo AI assistant for HR with a Swedish company called Sana, every time the Galileo tool searches our platform, it's all based on our research and our case study. It's all contained. We don't go out and look at the broader internet. So that's the broader danger, and that's what impacts governance big time.
It's a very, very good and solid point there on the on that as well. Before I get the final piece of advice from everyone here on the panel, I am going to get you all ready because we're going to have a Q&A. And so I know I've seen a lot of people jotting down questions as we go. So we'll head to the audience after this. But final piece of advice for everyone in the room about AI transformation. We've touched on a few things, but a one-liner on what your piece of advice would be.
Be different where it makes a difference. So I think what Jacinta said around you don't have to do this on your own, but you don't have to start from scratch around what is every task in every job. Firstly, I don't even think you have to do every job, but be different where it makes a difference, and everywhere else use what has already been developed by somebody else.
Thanks, Deb. Get your data right. Understand your work, understand your tasks, then you can understand your workers. Then you can start to really build out your workforce of the future using a new DNA.
The only thing I'd say is don't focus on the solution, try and understand what the problem is that you're trying to fix. Too many people jump the solution mode straight away. And the only other thing I do is encourage all of you, because I think this is an issue that's, if you like, a furphy out there that people don't know what AI is. So we could be preaching to great depths there. They don't know what AI is, they don't know what it can do, they don't know how to access it, they don't know how to build a strategy. So my final comment there would be curious. Go out and see what's happening. Talk to other organisations. Come along and talk to Reejig. Talk to Deb about what's happening. That's live examples. It's the only way you're going to get a better understanding of what's possible.
Thank you. Okay, who is the first cab off? Who is going to be our first question of the evening? Here we go. Our first hand up over here.
Hi there, my name is Yvette. I'm from Care. We are facing the challenge of a global shortage of nurses. And so, and we work often collaboratively with other providers in the sector because we're a not-for-profit. When one of us wins, we all win, and when we can shape the industry, we all do care better. And so I'm really curious about, have you looked at this model and some of these solutions at an industry-wide level? We know we can't solve the nursing shortage ourselves. Would love your thoughts on how you've worked at an industry level on some of these challenges.
Thank you for that. That is absolutely a fantastic question. We are just starting to scratch the surface of that now. So, to your point, people do, this is an industry-wide issue. And it's not actually just an Australia issue. This is a global issue. we are having lots of conversations, especially within the government as well,
They're both echoing.
looking
Listen to my
at
ears.
industry-wide, but also
Jane
outcome-based,
here had a
not
question.
just for nurses, but also outcome-based tasks, or how we break tasks down to actually look at outcome-based initiatives rather than positions. So, look, this is all new and everybody is learning, but we are speaking to lots of people who have the industry expertise in this, and I would like to bring you in actually on that, because it would be really great if we could get some minds in a room together to help problem solve what this looks like from an industry perspective, especially when it comes to our carers and our RNs. Yeah.
Jane, you're up.
You talked about identifying the tasks and then connecting that to the worker or to the role or whatever. And then what? What do you do then? Like, who does the AI thing in an organisation? Do we have to do we get the IT department to try and figure that out for us? Or like, are we trying to sit at our desks and, I know you said don't use ChatGPT, but are we trying to, or Copilot, what's next? Once you've done that bit, then what?
Awesome question. And this is where we were talking about some of those use cases as well. Once we understand the tasks that actually have AI or automation potential, what we can do is actually create a roadmap. So rather than, as I said before, some businesses are just coming and making decisions, right? But we need to be thinking about this from a business-wide transformation perspective. So we need to build out for organisations, by helping you to provide to understand the data, what that business-wide roadmap or strategic AI roadmap looks like. So the work operating system that I was talking about before, in terms of understanding the work intelligence behind all of that, that helps to actually prioritise what needs to kick off first. So if you understand how much time someone spends on a particular task, what the AI potential is of that, how many people you have doing that task, and it could be several hundred people, because horizontally it could be across many different job families in the organisation. We can actually calculate that, show the number of human hours that can be unlocked, and the actual dollar savings is if that is something that is important to the organisation. Once you have all of that data, you can strategically prioritise what needs to be worked on first. And I think maybe Deb, you could probably talk about the importance of that.
Yeah, maybe to take a slightly different, because it can feel paralysing, like so much, where to start, how do I know where the biggest difference is? So I'll come back to go where the noise is first. So find something that's really noisy. I would say for your customers first, that will have a talent lens on it. You will start with customer, you will super quickly get to a talent lens. Figure out the tasks that make that up, then you'll need to use some external provider to help you figure out what can be automated, and then listen to your people around where they're burnt out and bored out in that task, in that customer challenge, and shift them to the work they want to do. Then you tip, you do that once. And then and so my advice is go where the noise is. I would go customer first, but if not, then go where your noisiest people problem is. But pick one and solve that. And you know what? It's probably going to be not one function. It'll be the nexus of a couple of functions. That's where the pain is for our customers. It's always where functions need to work together. Our customers don't care how we're structured. And that's the beauty of this, because you'll break it down into tasks. You'll be able to show the benefit of not being stuck in the old job structure. So I found it too overwhelming to start with, let's map everything, let's do all and it also felt hard to get everybody energized behind it versus solving a noise first and then the wave. Like this becomes like a wave of change rather than pull. Does that make sense?
See in the dark. I'd like to just take it back a step, and I think about an organisation that probably isn't savvy in technology or digitally savvy, and where would you start from an education perspective? Just helping the organisation, helping the people understand about AI or technology. What suggestions do you have for organisations you've worked for that are really sort of far behind?
Look, I think it still comes back to what Ed was talking about, and that is understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. You can run a workshop, we can give you some programs, all of those sorts of things, but there's got to be why are we doing this and what's the outcome. So it's really trying to pick a problem, as Deb said, and then starting to look at alternative ways of addressing that problem. And one of those needs to be technology, and then if you extrapolate that a bit further, it needs to be AI, and that's when you bring somebody in to actually talk about what it is, because as I said earlier, there's a fear, what is it, what impact has it got, what are the benefits to the organisation, and then the second piece of that is providing some examples of how organisations are using AI to impact. But it's about, as I said, it's about the problem. I couldn't agree with you more.
I think I just have one other tip for you, which is, and it doesn't matter which company, we were looking at Deloitte, Accenture, etc., who just have really great basic digital skills capabilities, and it's a win-win for your people. It creates curiosity. Also, it starts to lean into, okay, there's going to be a fear that jobs are impacted. Our view is that it's more likely parts of jobs, like some whole jobs will go, but in most of the time it'll be parts of jobs. How awesome is it that we're reskilling our people in skills that are going to be needed, if not for us, but somewhere else? So the two that I used to working with were those two, but I'm sure there's plenty of others, but it's absolutely worthwhile to start to close that courage gap of fear, and that's the unknown. So start to get a bit more knowledgeable and curious about it. It's absolutely money well spent.
I want to build a little bit, Deborah, on what you were saying concerning where to go first. So we've talked a lot about efficiency and productivity and tasks and skills, but without that value driver, it's all very well kind of being productive and efficient, but if you're being super efficient on the wrong things, then it's completely useless. And I'm interested in your views on leadership. And so you could have data models that will help you make decisions, but if you're a crap decision maker, it doesn't matter. If you've got all the data in the world to talk about performance, if you're crap at having one-on-one conversations, it just doesn't matter. And I'm sort of interested in how we bring leadership into this, because effective and productive employees, that's great, but they're only going to be effective and productive if they're working on things that engage and motivate them. So what's the crossover for you with all of the stuff that we've talked about, which is fabulous, and the thing that rules everything, leadership?
What a spot-on question. I think, and you'll probably have a lot to say about this, Alec, but I think modern leadership is, so the skills that you were just mentioning around critical thinking, I think, I'm sorry to get on my bandwagon, but I think ethical, like being able to make good ethical decisions, leaders that are philosophical in their thinking, that take time to reflect, those are skills that we need to develop in modern leaders. If you haven't updated your leadership development program for 5 years, it's probably time. Like, these skills and capability for leaders are incredibly different. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely spot on, but Alec, you probably have a well-researched view.
I was going to go for the pragmatic view. I'd say you need to change your leader, but anyway. maybe that's a bold decision. If I go back to the PwC survey and the percentage of CEOs who get, or leaders who get, the importance of AI and the impact over the next 5 years, you've got to role model those behaviours. And I think Deb was talking about getting the whole buy-in of the executive team, for example. You've got to make sure, a little bit like the education point down the end, you've got to make sure that all your leaders get what AI is, why it'll have an impact, and then what do they need to do in terms of helping that journey along the way, and that's addressing the noise, as I think you called it. So yeah, as I said, I'm a bit more pragmatic, and the board chair needs to make a decision, or somebody else. If your leaders don't get data as important, that's all.
Okay, is there one last burning question, or are we've got one more and then we'll wrap up? But the questions can keep going.
I'm going to tap on the offshoring dilemma. So one of the business strategies to scale up and reduce costs is to offshore. AI is going to bring in efficiencies around that and change the workforce to where you go, well, why would you offshore? Is the value still there? So the question is, how do you think offshoring is going to be impacted for businesses in the context of AI and the change of the workforce landscape?
Great question, spot on. We're having lots of conversations about offshoring versus AI. Some of the use cases, again, we have people come to us saying we want to understand the nature of the work, break down the tasks so that we can offshore it. I challenge that. I challenge as to whether offshoring is actually the right decision. And again, to Alex's point, it's what problem are you trying to solve for? Offshoring is expensive. AI, sure, there's a fundamental outlay initially, but that is a business decision that needs to be made in terms of return on investment and what that looks like. If there's already offshoring hubs that are set up and capable, then fantastic. But again, that is a business decision. The other thing to think about too is if you're offshoring, it is people that are working on those tasks. How efficient are those people going to be? And let's actually think about breaking down the tasks of those people in addition to the tasks that you want to be offshored in the first place. So it is a really topical conversation, Jules, right now. And I think it's one that we need to sort of keep challenging and talking about, but it's very much a business decision that can only be made based off the data.
Just add two things to that. One, I would make sure I had in my contract some sort of incentive for the offshorer to make the most out of AI. I think that will be mission critical. And then I think that there's probably more opportunity for a higher level tasks to move offshore. I don't think it's as black and white as there'll be no offshore. I think actually the service that might just keep going up a level because there will still be a labour arbitrage with the labour that we have left, and there's still an obligation to the massive number of people that we've hired. But we'll make sure my commercials had some real incentives to, because why would you do yourself out of a job? So I'd be very focused on that.
And the labour arbitrage is an interesting one because many organisations have already realised that the cost of labour, particularly age, is going through the roof anyway. I'm going to dissect that a little bit and talk about call centres because a lot of those are offshore. And when you look at my TA example, we're certainly seeing through some of our research that that's another area that organisations are looking to use AI, particularly if it's customer facing. We've all had wonderful experiences. I'm going to be careful what I say here with the airlines, the banks, and everybody else where you that's not using AI in the context. That's the old chatbot scenario and everything else. But I think if it's a call centre environment, you'll find AI will make a bigger impact around it.
Okay. Well, thank you for the wonderful questions, but also a huge thank you to our wonderful panel. It was a really, really good discussion.